There we go. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I want to extend my warm welcome to all our foreign guests, especially for those of you who are visiting Manila and the Philippines for the first time. I hope you don't get stuck inside this conference hall or the conference halls for too long, such that you don't have enough time to visit the city and the country. So welcome to the Philippines. Well, as mentioned, I'm the co-chairman of the National Competitiveness Council. Let me just say a few words about it. It's a government council whose membership is composed of both the public and the private sector. We have the majority of the council composed of cabinet secretaries, and then a few of us in the private sector serving on the council. By law, the co-chairman of the council must be from the private sector, so I work for Ayala Corporation, but have been seconded to run the council for a number of years, since 2011. So first I want to thank Anthony for his presentation on the Economic Freedom Index of ranking and rating, actually, the score for the Philippines. As you can see, we're up a little bit this year, 65.6 points, and now above both the regional and the world average. This is worth pointing out because this was not always the case for the Philippines, and at NCC we track 12 such competitiveness indicators globally, some of them covering as many as 180 to 190 economies or countries in the world, some fewer than that, maybe about 45. But in almost all cases, when we go back to the 1990s, we were in the bottom 20% of the world, and until quite recently, in the bottom 1/3 of the world. So we rank quite low, well below median and well below averages. So we're quite happy to see a progression. As has already been pointed out, it's been a long and journey for us, but I'm happy to report that it's been a steady forward progress on this journey, where we moved from categories, as we moved up now into the moderately free categories. And here, I'd like to show the top 10 most improved over a span of years from 2011 to the 2017 report. And you will see here the Philippines is in this list of the top 10 most improved in scores. So reflecting sort of the steady progress that's been made as far as the Economic Freedom Index. And in terms of rank, also moving in a very big way, actually, by 57 economies on this on the ranking scale, from 115 when we started in 2011 in the current round of the National Competitiveness Council, now to 58. So we're happy with this progress. As I mentioned, we track 12 such indicators, so let me try to give you sort of the big picture when we step back a little bit from just the Economic Freedom Index. We track, aside from Heritage Foundation, we track these other 12 indicators, the Doing Business Report. You'll be familiar with many of these things: the Ease of Doing Business Report by IFC, the Corruption Perceptions Index by Transparency International, the Global Competitiveness Report by World Economic Forum, and so on and so forth. So we're particularly pleased that since 2010, 2011, when we started tracking very actively, we've moved up on 11 of the 13 indicators. So not quite the perfect score. We're relatively happy with it. We've dropped in the last two, and Logistics Performance Index was one of the areas where we dropped. So maybe we could learn, I think, from the lessons of Paraguay for, when they became a logistics hub, because as an island group of over 7,100 islands, it is important for us to be able to address these logistics issues. But nonetheless, we're pleased that we've been able to move up the ladder as far as competitiveness is concerned, and as far as economic freedom is concerned. So if I take a look at the I pick four of among our major gains or largest gains since 2010, 2011. Now you can see that we're plus 57 on the Economic Freedom Index, coming from 115. So at 115, we're quite low in the tables. We were in the bottom third, and now we're at within the top third. So it's quite a turnaround there. In the Doing Business report, we're plus 49, but we're still in the middle third. Just below the median, and just about the median, I guess. Corruption Perception Index, we've made some headway, plus 33, and in the Global Competitiveness Report also made some headway here, plus 28. So if we go back to the economic freedom, the four pillars, and I won't go into the details of what makes up each pillar, but generally, rule of law, government size, regulatory efficiency, and open markets. And it's already been stated that rule of law and governance and leadership are important factors. These freedoms are something that we cannot take for granted, and they do have an impact on our economic performance. So, as we try to build up the Philippines, what is it that we do to try to make the country not only economically more free, not only to improve the rule of law, not only to improve regulatory efficiency and open markets? We try to tackle this across a range of projects and programs that we have here at NCC, and I will just sort of quickly illustrate the other things that we do to try to, build a big picture and a big reform program for the Philippines. If we take a look at our programs, we break it down as follows. We have a sectoral focus, a geographical focus, institutional, a process improvement focus, regulatory focus, and a customer focus. So with sectoral focus, we've created working groups. These are composed of public and private sector individuals working in committees focused on a specific sector, say energy or education and human resource development. On a geographical focus, because we're a large country, 100 plus million people across 7,000 islands, we've created a Cities and Municipalities Competitiveness Index, covering our over 1,000 cities and municipalities. For institutional focus, we use a management tool, the Balanced Scorecards tool, and apply that to national government agencies and local government agencies and government corporations. For process improvement, we try to improve what everybody knows is the ease of doing business indicators. There are 10 of them, but there are many more. 10 are measured by World Bank, IFC, but there are many more. And then regulatory focus, we created a project called Project Repeal, which is to clean up all the rules and regulations and legislation that has been building up for decades, which we feel are detrimental to the economy or are in fact no longer relevant. And then finally, a customer focus, because we feel that essentially investors and citizens are the basic customers of government. We are the users of government services. So we undertake surveys, periodic surveys and customer feedback surveys to try to figure out are government services in fact getting better or deteriorating. So I'll run you down quickly. This one is City Municipalities Competitiveness Index. A little bit like economic freedom, we created an index based on things like governance and infrastructure, economic dynamism, and we added the fourth pillar on resilience because that's an important indicator for us here in the Philippines. And you can see how quickly this has ramped up. from 0 cities covered in 2012, we've moved up very quickly. Now we're covering 1,389 cities and municipalities as of last year. Virtually every city that we have, 144 out of 146 cities, for instance. So we're going to, we give out this annual award, and this August we will announce the 2017 results and probably see that number move up. So that's about 80% of the cities and municipalities in the Philippines. We view these as the building blocks of national competitiveness, so it's important for us to build competitive cities and municipalities and regions. On the institutional side, we use public balanced scorecards to create this performance governance system. Back in 2006, we started with national agencies, only 6 of them, before I joined NCC. Today, we're working with about 47 national government agencies and local government units, and we've started to add government financial institutions and government-owned corporations to this list. And we're trying to build them up to the point where we can do a performance audit by an external auditor on each of these agencies. We're doing an external audit on 12 of them right now. In the ease of doing business, we created a very large task force and embarked on our so-called game plan for competitiveness. And we built this task force across many agencies, plus the private sector, and then 10 sub-task forces, 1 per indicator. And the results have been that, when we started deep in the list down at 148th, we've now been able to move up to 99. And with this group, we hope to make big improvements over time. So this is a regulatory improvement process project, but it's also a good example of a public-private partnership to be able to solve problems and introduce reforms. In the case of repeal, because we found that we had so many rules, regulations, and legislation stemming back several decades, which we felt needed to undergo a review, we started this project of repeal, which is just to eliminate all the rules and regulations that were no longer necessary or irrelevant. Some of them were actually contradictory. We started at the national level with 8 agencies just last year in 2016. Today we have 80 plus participating agencies and partners. We are on the way to develop a standard cost model so that we can determine every time we eliminate a law, how much are we saving in terms of cost of compliance or administrative burden on entrepreneurs and generally on the economy. So this has become, as you can see, a very fast-moving and large project for us. And this team, or teams rather, are reviewing over 35,000 rules and regulations which are being considered for repeal or amendment or consolidation. So far, they've cleaned up 5,000 of the initial list, but it's a very tedious process and legal review to do it, but we feel it's necessary to be able to bring about more regulatory efficiency for the government and, make life simpler for entrepreneurs and investors. And these are the results so far. I mean, we can do all we want, but at the end of the day, we need to look at the results. And I think as Anthony was demonstrating, on a global basis, the higher the economic freedom scores by quartile or even on a global basis, you can see that GDP has risen, poverty incidence has dropped, and investor confidence, as reflected in foreign direct investments, has also risen. Well, it's the same for the Philippines. Over this time that we have been able to move up our competitiveness rankings and scores, not only for Economic Freedom Index, but across a wide range of global competitiveness indicators. We've seen that our GDP in 2011, which was 3.7%, by 2016 had improved to 6.8%, and in fact, the average rate has been a little over 6% in that period from 2011 onwards, because from 2012 to 2016 we had extremely strong years of growth. FDI, which was at one time $2 billion a year, has now moved up. The preliminary figure is $6.9 billion for last year, and we hope to maintain this reform program and maintain the momentum. And finally, we've seen poverty, which was stubbornly high through actually from the period 2000 to 2011, moving at the level of about 25, 26, 27%, quite high, among the highest in the ASEAN region. Then finally, we began to make some headway, still too high in my opinion, but at least we've begun to see a downward trend in the poverty figures. I'm convinced that if we continue looking at these principles of economic freedom, of global competitiveness, of good governance, of regulatory efficiency and open markets, that I have no doubt that the Philippines will continue to show much more progress on the economic front. And together, between the public sector and the private sector, I am even more convinced that this is possible. We've seen it happen, and we're quite sure this will continue. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions later on.